Hello, all, and welcome back. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by a very special guest. She is currently a young artist on the Royal Opera House's highly prestigious Jette Parker Young Artist Programme. Having made her debut in 2020 as Daphne and Apollo and Daphne, she is trained at prestigious schools including Guildhall, Royal Northern College of Music, and the National Opera Studio, as well as multiple national competition successes. Alexandra Lowe is with us today, sharing her knowledge, wisdom, and personal experiences throughout her career as a young professional and how she continues to overcome and thrive throughout her career. So, welcome, Alex. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. It's really exciting to have you on here, and I'm sure many are eager to hear about your experiences today.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope I can share some good stuff. We'll see.
Of course, of course. I'd love to start by saying how much I admire you and are in awe of everything you're achieving as a young professional. I saw you fairly recently at an Insights masterclass with Joyce DiDonato, and can I just say how mesmerized I was from your aria from Theodora? I remember a
Oh,
small group of us coming from Trinity, and we were so taken aback by how emotive your interpretation was and how much control and beauty you executed the aria with.
that's very kind. Thank you. Yeah, it was a really exciting thing to be singing for Joyce. And it was really exciting. Like you say, I feel like it was a really unusual way to sing a Handel aria because she was like kind of making me give like so much.
Of
It was really
course,
dramatic.
of course, of course.
So I sort of went in with like a lot. It was kind of a bit tentative and stuff, but by the end she was like, I think she's singing at me, like singing with me, and it was just like,
Of
ah.
course. No,
I'm glad
of
a bit of that
course.
came across. So
It's gorgeous.
thank you very
It
much.
sounded gorgeous, honestly. If anyone listening has not had the pleasure yet of listening to Alex and watching her perform, she is one of the most captivating and exciting young talents. If you are as intrigued as she should be, you can visit the Royal Opera House's YouTube channel, where she gives a range of stunning performances featuring operatic works from various composers, so do give them a watch. So let's dive straight in. I'd love to contextualize and learn a little more about your musical journey. You were born in Mallorca and started singing around the age of 13 whilst living in Palma. You've had a very illustrious career at such a young age, ranging from opera to recital work and a very diverse range of works from Mozart to Brahms. I'd love to hear, where did your passion for opera and classical singing begin for you?
Well, actually, it didn't start when I was 13 at all, really, because I didn't really grow up with much music or arts or anything like that. In Mallorca, I had a sort of really rural life, and I was just very outdoorsy and beach. You get the picture, Mallorca. I mean, it is what it is. So, but yeah, my mom and my parents bought this like Christmas album by Charlotte Church, and I could just imitate her really naturally. And think I could always sing like Wuthering Heights and things like that. It was like, okay, there's a voice in here, but I never took it seriously. And then when I was singing along to the Ave Maria on the Charlotte Church CD, my mum was like, oh well, maybe we should get you some singing lessons. And then like we searched the island and found this lovely sort of amateur dramatics society, actually run by a couple of Englishmen, and and so I went there. I was Spanish. I went to Spanish school at the time, so that was like my first introduction to English people as well on the island and stuff. So yeah, I went there, and he actually, the singing teacher there, gave me I think it was like O mio bambino caro or something like that. And one fine day, Madame Butterfly, it was really badly sung at that time. But that's how I got into it, I guess. And I did like lots of musicals there, and Nancy in Oliver, and
Amazing.
Sandy in Greece, and all of those things. And that's kind of where I wanted to go, but my voice just wasn't suited to that style. Like I never had a belt, and so I was like singing Nancy like a choir boy, really.
Bless you.
So it was like maybe I should just try going down the sort of more soprano route. So and my mum was like, how do we even begin? Like, what do you do? We live in Mallorca. What do you want to do? So I was like, maybe we should go back to the UK. So we moved out to England. and I got the place at the Junior Royal Northern College of Music. And that's where it all sort of, my proper training started when I started my A-levels, and I went there on Saturdays. So that's sort of how I got into it. And the rest just got kind of, it wasn't even at 16, I still wasn't really quite sure if it was going to be for me. And it didn't, I didn't sort of decide fully until I had to go to study it at university, and that was when I was 19, because I took a gap year.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Wow. And was there a particular figure or inspiration for you that drove you to pursue it professionally?
I don't think there was at that stage. Like, there's certainly no one in the opera world. Like, there was I never watched, at that point, there was never Gorky or Renee Fleming or Period. These are things that came later for me. But what I found was that I just had a love for singing. I just loved being on the stage, and I loved that I was good at it, and I loved that sort of, I felt like I thrived in that environment, and I think my passion grew from there, really. But yeah, it's hard to say one particular person, because maybe it's like Charlotte Church or Catherine Jenkins. They were the crossover people who got me in the beginning. Sarah Brightman as well. Yeah, it really was people who don't know much about opera and the classical world. That's who they go to, and that's how I got into it, really. So yeah,
it's like a very mixed background. That's really cool. Wow. So this next section, I'd love to dive a little more into your personal journey with well-being and the symptoms of performance anxiety specifically. I recently conducted a survey, and this went to around 50 young musicians, of whom currently attend conservatoires, who have recently graduated or were very soon to attend. In response, about 93% of respondents came back and said they had in the past or they currently suffer from performance anxiety, ranging from various degrees from minor to severe. Being such a common issue within the industry, do you feel like there is enough conversation surrounding the topic today?
I think once you go through this, once you experience performance anxiety, if you're lucky and you're able to, you reach out to the people who are around you. So, your teachers, your peers, family, people like that, and I think then there's more conversations to be had. But actually, what I found was a little bit lacking was being able to prepare for that happening. Say, when I was 19 and I started at college, at that age, I really wasn't anxious. I was super carefree, and I didn't really get, of course there was nerves, and there always are nerves, but nothing that was going to stop me from performing or anything like that. But yeah, it's I think once you get to that point, you either quit or you tackle it. And I think by tackling it, you speak to people, and then, I'm really lucky to have been in an environment at the Royal Opera House where you can talk. I'm a very open person, so I do talk to people all the time about it. And it's out there. People do want to talk about it, and it's just a matter of, I suppose, great that you've reached out to me and that you're opening up this conversation.
Amazing, yeah. I feel like I had a very similar experience. I think coming into conservatoire for the first time, it can be a very overwhelming experience. It feels like, I think often that it's your very first big step into the professional world, and for a lot of people, especially if they're making their first step, say into maybe a young artist program or into conservatoire, or maybe their first big job, it's so overwhelming, and it does feel a bit like it hits you all at once, and you kind of aren't entirely sure ways in how to deal with it. And as you say, reaching out to other people is so helpful, but it can feel a little isolating at times as well. And yeah, it's quite overwhelming to deal with, definitely. Yeah,
it's a hard one. It's interesting that you say that you want to reach out to people, but I think there's a massive I certainly had fear of doing that at first, because
yes, definitely.
I thought that people would judge me for being nervous or for not being on top of everything, or
Of
being top
course.
of my game, or whatever. And so it's hard to open up about it. And I think that's why I say you must only open up to people who you really trust.
Of course, yes.
Like, you know, your singing teachers, your very close friends, your family. You know, those are the people who are, I mean, I wouldn't go and if you're like struggling with a role, or you've got your recital coming up and you're really stressing out about it, maybe that's not the best time to open up about these things. You know, it's like, get that out of the way, and then understand why you were in that position and take it from there.
Of course, definitely.
I think going to a conservatoire, or for me, it happened when I started at the Guildhall, actually, which was a new conservatoire. So I'd spent like junior school times at the Royal Northern, and then 6 years there. And I honestly, I felt so confident there. I was in an environment where I felt really valued, and I was doing well, and you know, I had good friends around me and all of that. And then it was when I came to London, and that was when I was like 25, 26. You know, I moved to London. I went to the Guildhall, and that's when it all started for me. But you know, I think for many people that might start earlier, like when you join for undergrad, for example, or you start masters in a new place or whatever.
Yes.
So yeah.
What is something you feel would be an important step to increase conversation and encourage more openness around the topic?
Let's start at like conservatoire level, okay? So maybe it would be getting someone like me in, or getting people who are a bit further ahead in their careers to come in and discuss it with people in a really, I don't think it's like a lecture situation where there's like a massive 100 like singers in front of you, and you all, you know, it's got to be done in a really intimate way. And I think it should be maybe even like I mean, you know, at the Opera House, we're so lucky there because there's only 4 of us young artists, and there's like this amazing program. But they do offer like a therapist, and she like basically gets to the bottom of why you're thinking in this way, or like whatever. So you know, those things are really important. But I think the best work that I've done myself, and it has been over time. It's not something that you can fix. It takes a lot of reflection and things like that.
Yeah. And I think especially like because all symptoms of anxiety, or every case of performance anxiety, is so individual to a person, because you know, we're all wired up differently, we've all been through different things. Some people may have experienced different things leading up to the event of it happening, that we might be better attuned to deal with it better. And yeah, it's so tricky to deal with as an individual, because you know, everyone else is wired up very differently, and I think that's what makes it so tricky. But within the last episode, we spoke about a range of factors that are commonly associated with performance anxiety, so including imposter syndrome, getting stuck in black and white thinking, and letting go of perfectionism. Looking back at the survey, some of the most common struggles students reported facing were the first being letting go of perfectionism, the second being turning off the inner critic, and the third was struggling with external validation and the opinion of others. On a personal level, as anxiety is experienced so differently by each individual, have you always experienced performance anxiety? And what kind of symptoms have you experienced? And how has that affected your approach and your mindset to performing?
As I said before, like I didn't always have this. It was not something that I had in my early 20s. And, you know, in a way, and I can say this now, when it all came on, I was very close to giving up, of course, and you know, I was just like, this is ridiculous, can't do this anymore. But in a way, I'm so glad I went through that, because I'm now like 30, and I know, well, I'd like to think that I know how to handle it in a better way, you know. So I mean, for me, it all started when I was about 25, 26. I went down to the Guildhall, and it was the first time that I really started comparing myself to others. So it was basically like self-doubt, massive doubting my abilities, like where is my place among the many singers, these many new singers that I was around, and also at that point, it's like the further along you get, the further and this was at opera school. you know, it's like the bar just gets higher and higher and higher.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just so worried of like not being up there with the rest of my class, you know.
Mm.
That was the ultimate thing. The other thing that happened to me was that I changed teachers, and I think this is really important, to have someone who you genuinely trust and you get on really well with, and who you can be quite personal with. Like, that's what I would like, and I like to have in a teacher. And so when that was taken away from me, everything I was doing just felt like I was doing it wrong. So like the voice that was inside of my head when I was singing was, you sound awful, you can't sing anymore, you know, everyone's better than you, this is your last year of singing because after Guildhall you're never going to get anywhere else, all of these things, you know. So I suppose then I had to audition as well. So as I was leaving the Guildhall, I had to do auditions for like the next step, and I was just so nervous. I mean, I would walk in to the audition, adrenaline, heart starts beating, dry mouth, just doubting everything, you know. And I didn't do well because of those things. And at the end of the day, we just need to learn how to control those feelings, and then you can get through it. But at that point, I couldn't take control of them. And so, in a way, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I really nearly gave up. And luckily, I did get a place at NOS. So after Guildhall, I went to NOS. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe I wasn't ready to go onto a young artist programme, you know, and work in an opera house. And I'm going to use this year at NOS to give it my last shot, in a way. And actually, just before I went to NOS, it was all around the same time, I entered a competition. It was the Clonta Singing Prize, I think it's called. And I was listening to Joyce DiDonato's Desert Island Discs, which is really good if you're going through anxiety. So I was listening to that, and a part of me was like, okay, if you just do this last performance, if this doesn't go well, you can give up. So that was my thing. And I was like, it doesn't matter what happens. Like, you've given it your best shot, and I've won this competition. And I genuinely think it's because I just gave up. I stopped caring. Mm. It's like I'd already given up. So I stopped caring, and then I won it. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to, like, get my shit together, you know? So anyway, I went to NOS, and I just literally just was like, how can I, you know, when I walk onto the stage, what is going to make me feel my most confident? And the only thing that I could think of was, in myself, I need to know that I have done everything in my power. And then at the end of the day, then it's out of my hands. So it all comes down to me in my preparation for a role. So like, or arias, or whatever it is that you're doing, a scene. So I literally it's just a question of, have I prepared this enough to know that even if I'm really nervous, it's going to be fine? And that's what I did. And then I luckily got the Royal Opera House, Theatre Parker, and then after that I won the Glambourne Cup, and I didn't win it, I got second prize actually. But you know, I got the prize there, and I think it was genuinely just because there's something changed in my mind, you know, and I changed my mindset, and I just applied myself in a way that I hadn't had to before, because I was just sort of floating along like everything was hunky-dory. But anyway, I also changed teachers. So I started studying with Yvonne Kenny, and she just sort of lifted me up again. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. Actually, I sort of went on a bit of a ramble.
No, it's great stuff. It's really informative, honestly. No, definitely. I feel honestly like, it's as you say. I think a really big step is taking the pressure away from the final outcome of the performance itself. Like, I think we very often put so much pressure on ourselves to be like, I want this to go well, I want this to go a certain way, or by this point I want to be singing like this, or I want my voice to sound like this. And there becomes a point where you kind of have to step back and almost accept, okay, I'm only in control of what I can control, and I'm in control of, the factors that are in my control, like how hard I work. I can spend all the time on like my preparation of my language. I can spend all the time on my scales. I can spend all my time on my breath work and stuff. And the final outcome will be what it is. And I feel like a lot of it is really focusing or drawing more of your focus onto the process itself rather than I want this to go a certain way, because otherwise we kind of over focus and go a little bit into overdrive and think, oh god. And whether things like go well, and sometimes it's a weird phenomenon when we kind of think, oh, let's take a step back and I don't really care what's going to happen. And sometimes it ends up being the best we've ever performed, which is really weird. That sometimes it's just about taking the pressure off ourselves, and then for some reason things just fall into place. And
I just wanted to talk a little bit about like what we do when we like compare ourselves to others, right? And because I think this is the absolute beast that we need to avoid, okay? And I think, this is literally when all of my anxiety and performance anxiety, I should say, kicked in. It was literally when I started looking sideways rather than on my journey. And I think the thing is, when you're at conservatoire, is that you get double cast. It's like always double cast, and you get all these lovely opportunities. Or if you're doing recital, it's like one after another. Or you're in class and you have to get up and perform. And it's this idea that your peers are being compared to you. And I think that there is a big difference between what you're experiencing at college or whatever compared to the profession. Because as soon as you leave that environment, you realise that you are an individual, and you're you're unique in your own way, and that's what makes you stand out. Whereas, for example, at the Guildhall and the opera, the academy or whatever, they have these opera schools, and they're mostly double cast. And I'm just like, and then you all have to sit there and watch each other rehearse the same bits, and you get up and then like the reviews come out or whatever, and you're all in the same costumes, and it's like, how toxic is that for your mind? And I hadn't realised I was double cast for many, many years, like through my time at the Northern, and then when I was at the Guildhall. And I think it's just like, I don't know why they do it. If you're in the profession and it's double cast, and there has been at the Opera House, you don't rehearse at the same time. So you would never be in the room watching your opposite person, or whatever, your doppelganger, doing it, you would go and you would have a completely separate rehearsal. And I think that is one of the main reasons people struggle and have all these anxiety problems at college. Because even the people that don't sort of suffer from it or whatever, or think they're fine, I've seen them then come out with stuff, It's really, really interesting. I think it's so toxic.
Definitely.
But I think it's just so important to remember that it is literally only one looking one way forward. Sorry. And I think in this day and age, there's the real issue as well with social media. I mean, you contacted me from social media, and I found myself. I mean, since Instagram came out, which I don't know when that was, maybe, but I don't know, like 10 years ago or something, probably not even that long. But anyway, I've been following things that interest me, which is basically singing. And so I found that I follow all of these singers on Instagram and on Twitter and even on Facebook, people who I've met through doing contracts or like chorus contracts through college. And I like social media, like I'm guilty of it. I hate it in many ways as well. But of course, in my break, what do? I pick up my phone. Or when I'm in bed, first thing in the morning, whatever you're doing, you're like constantly just getting this feed. And it's like this constant advert in your face saying, look at what all these other singers are doing. I mean, could there be a more toxic thing for people dealing with having
Definitely.
to just, comparing themselves with other people?
Of course.
And I just think it's so, I mean, it's dangerous in many other aspects of life. But for us as singers, I think it's one of the, in the olden days, I say the olden days, pre-like technology, the worst you'd get was like reading a review of someone in the paper,
of
or like word of mouth, maybe.
It's much easier to control.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
you know, like, it was so much easier. And so, you know, one of the main things that I have done in the last year, or maybe a bit more, is I have unfollowed everything linked to singing, even my friends. And that was really hard because, like, you know, I mean, close friends who are, like, really dear to me. But I'm just like, it's, at the end of the day, you're a soprano. You know what I mean? And it's not like, it just affects me. And I think it's not jealousy. It's not jealousy. Maybe it is jealousy sometimes, but it's at the end of the day, it makes me think, oh my God, you know, they're doing really well. Why haven't I got that job? Or maybe it's just like, anyway, those, I think that's really important if you are really into social media and you're having doubts about yourself.
Definitely.
And, you know, I think it's really important that we are inspired by people who are doing well and we follow their careers, but treat that as, like, maybe as work. Actually,
course,
you know, I'm going to spend some time and I'm going to watch this soprano who I follow on Instagram doing a recital, and it's part of, like, your growth. But if at any point it gives you that sinking feeling inside, you should acknowledge that and you should figure out what it is, you know?
Of course,
and
definitely.
You might think it's like, oh God, I just admire them so much. And of course that's fine. But do make sure it is that, because like, even with, like, other things on social media, like following models and things, it's the thing, you look at them, they've got this perfect, like, you're in, I was like, yeah, but I want to follow them because I'm inspired by them.
Of course, yeah.
But isn't it just making you feel bad about yourself?
Exactly. So yes, I
think, you know, try and stay on your path. Don't compare yourself to others. And that's one of the best pieces of advice I've got for anyone, to be honest.
Definitely.
So
definitely. Yeah. I think as well with social media, it's so subtle, and sometimes we don't even realize when it's happening. It's hard. It's made and engineered in a way for you to subconsciously, whether or not you're noticing it, to compare yourself constantly to everything. And you think, oh, I don't have this, or I don't have that, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. And but that person's doing this and that person's doing that. What am I doing? And it's so easy to get sucked into the wormhole almost of, we can put out what we like on social media and we can engineer it in a way that, you know, that makes us happy and the part of us that we want other people to see. And, you know, I think naturally it can be it can be a toxic breeding ground for creating perfectionism in this false world, which again doesn't really exist.
I am guilty of it. Like, my Instagram, you've spoken to me now. Okay, like, I try to be fairly open on Instagram and stuff. But even since all this, since I started distancing myself from it, I actually post less and I only post career-related things mostly. But that's not really me, you know? You know, that's the version of me. I'm not going to go on there and say, I've had a really crap rehearsal,
of course,
day, and I nearly ended the day crying, or whatever, you know, you're not going to say those things.
Of course.
You know, oh my God, I'm nearly losing my voice because I've been singing so much. Or,
of course, yeah.
You know, that stuff is not shared, and I think that's well, great that we can speak about these things here. But I think that the social media thing, toxic.
Need to be so careful with it, honestly.
Yeah. Definitely.
I guess this kind of ties into our last point with social media, but did you have any particular negative experience that really set you back, and how was the best way that you pulled through it?
The main things that set me back, like I said, were changing conservatoires and this series of auditions that went really badly for me. And this, I do believe, came from a place of comparing myself to others and not having a supportive teacher at the end of the day. That's like who really encouraged me, at the end of the day, I just wanted someone to tell me I was great and I was doing great. And I didn't have that, you know? So, like, personally, I like a teacher who does that. If you're with someone who's like, no, that's wrong, you know, breathe in, oh my goodness, I just want to sing in my lessons and call all the way, like, absolutely exhausted from singing so much and enjoying myself. And so, make sure you might not be that sort of learner. Some people quite like the strict and like really high pressure, but know if that's not right for you, and it's okay if it sets you back a year or two, which is what it did with me. I pulled myself through it, and I applied myself, and I worked frigging hard, and I got so low to the point where I was like, I'm giving up, and I'm okay with that. I was okay with it, and it's only when I got there that I started to grow again. So yeah, I'd say certain places that can challenge me are definitely like new places, new environments, new colleges, a group of new people who I haven't worked with yet, who I feel like I need to impress, all of those things. But all of those things are only going to be bad for you if you are not trusting yourself, if you don't trust the work that you've done. So that was what I'd say. When you're really nervous, I felt like the one thing that really affected me was my breath. And so I just felt like I couldn't breathe in. Even if there was like a massive pause and there loads of time to breathe, I would breathe in, and it was so like high that it would not be enough. And so I found like there's just one experience where I was singing actually the aria that you heard me sing with Joyce Donato. And it's not a hard aria to sing. I mean, actually, it's very middle voice. There are some long phrases, but with Handel, you should be able, to breathe what you need to breathe, even if I had needed more breath. But it was literally like, I just couldn't breathe. I was almost having this like panic attack, where I just felt like I just wanted to be swallowed into the earth, and I just wanted to disappear. I was just like, why am I doing this to myself? So I was like, so this is all breath related, and I've never been a very sporty person, but I suppose also it kind of came back a little bit when I was at the Royal Opera House because of all the filming, so it was this whole new idea that everything had to be filmed. And I, like Apollo and Daphne, it was like I had one stage in orchestra, and that was it, and then we had that, and that was it. So there was no like dress. It was literally like, you have one chance to do this. It was one show. Wow. It was 40% capacity. My debut at the Royal Opera House. I mean, it was absolutely terrifying, and it was filmed. And I was like, honestly, I was sitting like back at the back of the stage, and I had these branches in my arms and this curtain, and it was all full of smoke, and I was there, and I was like, and then the curtain comes up and I sing, and this curtain comes up and you see the Royal Opera House. I mean, it was terrifying. I can't even begin to tell you. But that, and it was a really active role as well as a load of running around. The experience was really traumatic. I got through it. And I remember thinking it was awful. Similar thing happened to me. I sang Rosetta, and it was like, again, like filmed, like massive cameras in your face. Royal Opera House Orchestra, full chorus, and all this. And it's only did have these major opportunities because of COVID. These wouldn't have happened for a young artist. Anyway, so I was like, oh my god, what am I going to do? Like, everything's filmed. I get one go at everything. So I thought it's all breath related. It was always like, and so I decided when I had loads of time in lockdown number 2, whatever it was, so I'd get really fit. And so I started doing HIIT workouts and stuff. And then the next major performance that I had was Romeo and Juliet's balcony scene on the main stage for the Young Artists Showcase. And because it was quite an active one as well. It was quite moving. Well, they all are these days. It always seems to be like you're running around trying to sing arias or whatever. Anyway, and but because I was like, the voice that I had in my head, and it got me through it. Like I was like, oh my god, I've mastered this like anxiety thing. Was like your body is there for you. Like even if you're so nervous, your body has been trained in a way to support you. And so I'm just like, I did all my breathing before going on, and it's that feeling of like my lungs are strong. It just like, and I was like nervous. Of course, you're nervous, you always are. But every time I took a breath in, I had this thought in my head. I was like, my body's strong, my lungs are strong for me. I can support myself, and it just like it really changed. It really changed everything for me. And so rather than like that, like feeling like you're not ready for this, or other horrible things that you might say to yourself in those moments. So yeah, I think those are is a really important thing. Get rid of social media and stop caring what other people think, and do it for you only. So if you're letting anyone down, it's only you, and you can deal with that, you know. I don't think it ever goes away. So I don't think, even though I've had a couple of good times on the stage and I've experienced, you know, I've had it's all turned out well. I've spoken to people who have been singing the lead roles in the Opera House recently, and I've been like, you know, and, you know, even they're like, how do you deal with anxiety or like performance anxiety? And, you know, they're like, it seems to be getting worse, you know, because it's like the more advanced you become, it's like the harder it is. There's just always more pressure. You've got to like...
And different things coming into the picture.
It always crops up. It always crops up in one way or another throughout our career, I think. And so the thing is just to be like, well, you know, I can't waste my time worrying about it. Or you can just accept it, you know, for what it is. And make it part of your process. Like, these nerves are feeding me, you know, these nerves are why I am, why we do it. You know, not why am I putting myself through this, but this feeling is this is the high. You know, this energy, these nerves, this is what's going to get me through this performance. It's going to make my voice fizz, or like that energy shake, and the audience is going to feed off that, you know. So all that sort of thing.
What kinds of techniques and practices, both inside and outside of music, have you found most beneficial for treating your symptoms? And how did you integrate them as part of your practice and your performance?
I think the most important thing is changing my inner dialogue. I just feel that, like, if you're on stage and you're, or even in your, you know, I mean, I do it all the time. My singing teacher at the moment, I'm studying with Paul Farrington. I was with Paul Farrington, and Jonathan Papp was playing. It was like, you know, great coaches there for me. And every time I opened my mouth, I gave this running commentary of why it was bad. And they were like, well, you're terrible. I mean, I'm there here preaching about like what I do. I don't do it all the time. That is the worst thing you can do, is criticize yourself and not believe in yourself. You know, singing top notes, oh my gosh, it's terrifying for me sometimes, you know, like really long phrases going on to really high notes. I don't want to overblow them and all of this. And I over analyze them, and I criticize them and all of that. That's the worst thing you can do. And I think actually being like, you don't have to say like, that was, if you know deep down it wasn't your best, or like it wasn't amazing, that's okay. You don't have to be like, I'm smashing it. But just be on it. Just be kind to yourself, you know. Speak to yourself as if, you know, people say this all the time, if you were a child, you wouldn't say those things to that child, you know.
Of course.
And so just change it really does work. You know, you might not feel like it takes practice. But yeah, definitely changing your inner dialogue. I think as well, like, well, the things that I've said about like, don't immerse. I just don't think you should immerse yourself fully in this industry. It can be really toxic and bad for us. You know, we're human beings, and we should surround ourselves with people who make us feel good. You know, I don't have time for people that don't do that. That's pretty brutal, but it's something that came later in my 20s. You know, and I was just like, do these people make me feel good or not? Well, if they don't, then I'm not going to have them in my life. And that it affects your singing, and it affects how you are, you know. So that, I would say, fitness is really important, because I'm constantly being asked to like run around the stage and sing. If I'm doing that and then I can't sing, I mean, you know, that's bad. So it also helps with your inner dialogue there. Before a performance, I don't always need to do this routine, because I'm often not nervous. If I'm singing like Barbarina, I'm not that nervous. But I know that as I leave the opera house, I'm going to be doing bigger roles, and I know that for a fact it's all going to start coming back to me a bit more. So I like, and this is really a very personal thing, but I have this playlist that is all like uplifting stuff, no opera on it, but it's all like, what is on there, like My Shot from Hamilton.
And, love Hamilton.
Don't Rain on My Parade.
Amazing.
It's on there. Anyway, I'll have to share it with you. But I need to find songs that are just basically like, you are amazing, and I'm not going to give up this chance at life. It can be related to many, it doesn't have to be specifically performance, but anything that just makes you feel powerful, like Lady Marmalade, or like anything that's like sassy. I like to play those things, and I like to be like, have this like, I don't want to say the F word, but F word it attitude.
Of course, yeah.
I just really like, sod it, I'm just going to enjoy myself as much as I can. If it goes wrong, take the pressure off, like, no one else cares apart from you. And that's the sort of, then I say that, but if I was singing something that was like, so for example, I'm doing Piero Lunaire at the moment, okay? It's Schoenberg, 45 minutes of me singing really atonal German random poetry. It's going to be really hard. So maybe for that one, actually having a really busy mind and exhausting all my energy won't be such a good idea. And I might just want to go home with my score peacefully. But, in that I know that I'm going to go wrong in this piece. Probably going to miss a few entries. I'm probably not going to sing all the notes right, and I've already forgiven myself for that. So just be like realistic at what your expectations are, and know that like even your like probably 60% of good is probably good enough.
Of course,
it's really important to let go of the perfectionism, because the audience won't know.
Definitely. I'm sure you will sound fabulous regardless, so it's all good.
It's a tricky one, that's for sure. Anyway,
I'm sure you'll sound fabulous. Have you ever experienced burnout, and how did you recuperate, or what helped you bring yourself back to normal and start building yourself back up again?
I mean, that's probably what happened to me probably towards the end of Guildhall. I was like, I was just unhappy. I was really unhappy. I didn't enjoy what I was doing anymore. And I really didn't think it was for me. I thought this is just too hard. The emotional side behind everything. It was basically being like, you've had this dream since you were like 13, let's say, when I started singing. And now probably like 12 years later, a bit more maybe, can't do a maths, but let's say 12, 15 years later, you put all this time towards it, but you're not good. You're just not good enough. Like, how can you stay motivated through that? And I think I did want to give up. Even my mum was like, it was like crying on the phone to her a lot. I don't know if you're close to your mum or your dad or who you're close to, but your person, right? And they just don't want to see you hurting anymore. And she was like, okay, we'll just come home, I mean, I suppose that's burnout. I hadn't really thought of it like that. But how did I get through it? Like I say, I was like, okay, I'm going to give it one last shot. And it was also, to be fair, my dad was really unwell at that time, and he passed away. And it was like, there's much more to life than the singing thing. It really was a big wake-up call, that like, life isn't singing. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be really enjoyable, and it's meant to be inspiring. And actually, if you select the people right, the people that you can surround yourself with can be pretty epic. We're so lucky to be doing this. And so I think that was a big turning point for me. And I just thought, I'm not going to go out, because actually I wasn't motivated. And the fact you brought that word up was really interesting, because I think when you lose your motivation, then you feel guilty as well. You feel like you're not working, and it's sort of like a vicious circle.
Definitely.
I don't feel inspired to work. and then you beat yourself up for not working, and then you don't feel like you're doing well, and then it's like, yeah. So, what I did was I just started working really hard. I was just like, I'm just going to give it one last go. I changed teachers and spent a lot of money on her. That was something that I had to find funding for because it didn't come through Guildhall or not. So I was lucky to do that. And I went to her and I shared everything with her, and she built me up again, and I put all of my faith into her and what she was telling me. And I sort of started going into auditions going like, it doesn't matter. This is your last go. If it doesn't work out, you can go and be a, I don't know, hippie in Mallorca again.
Nice. Love that.
As soon as I started with that attitude, I just took the pressure off myself and I started to get things again. So that was it, really.
Amazing.
That's what I would recommend. How to get through something like a burnout.
Of course. I think your point of staying or constantly having like that guilt to always stay motivated and always stay like everything's okay and everything, like keeping everything going, I think that's really interesting, because I feel like as well, I feel like perfectionism in this industry is really common, and I think there is this certain pressure to uphold this image of always looking busy, always looking motivated, always thinking, oh, everything's going great and I've got this and I've got that going on, and you do have moments of that and things going really well for you, but also there are times when, like you say, we are human, and sometimes we don't feel as motivated, and we are and we don't feel like picking up that new piece, so we don't feel like going all out today in the rehearsal, and I think it's very normal.
I think I must say that I suppose another thing that I do is I do take proper breaks when I need them. I haven't been able to do it much at the Opera House since like September, but I did actually, because I was rehearsing Peter Grimes and I was trying to learn Pure Lunaire. I was in rehearsals all day and I was doing 9 a.m. coaching, 5 p.m. coachings, like trying to learn this music around doing other stuff that I was doing. And you're always going to be in this situation. There's always more music to learn, always more technique to do, whatever, But actually, I found that I'm like, actually, at the end of the day, I do always turn up on day one and I know my stuff. So you've got to know what your limits are, right? But pushing myself this much at this time, making myself, you get that sad feeling in your heart. You're like, and you're not happy. And it often comes from work. Some people thrive off that. Like my partner does. He throws himself at his work and that makes him grow. It makes him feel much better. Sometimes for me it does the opposite, and it actually just makes me depressed. So depressed is a strong word, but it makes me sad and it makes me feel rubbish. So I took 3 weeks. I did little bits of Pure Lunaire, but mostly I just focused on Peter Grimes, which is what I was doing at that moment. And then I had to power work as well. I just find it kind of gives you the motivation that you need.
Yeah,
it's always
definitely.
like that with exams or with essays.
I have to do it.
Yeah, I've got to do it now. Okay. But that works for me. And then you find that it's sort of surge of, okay, it's got to happen now, whatever.
Having read more about your background, you're also very inspirational in the work you do outside of music. Alongside your studies, you've managed to raise over £20,000 for charities through several concerts through the UK. These have included performances for Help the Heroes, music in hospitals, and Aiming High for disabled children, which is just absolutely phenomenal and shows how much of an inspirational role model you are, just for not only for singers and for young people alike as well. With such a busy schedule, how do you keep yourself motivated, and what helps you to keep yourself feeling inspired?
I think for me, it's just finding the balance of, when you work hard, you play hard kind of thing. So it's like, if I'm just on work mode all the time, I stop enjoying it. And so I like to work sort of more precisely. and intensely, and then give myself proper breaks. And yeah, I think, I mean, you know, for example, in lockdown, I hadn't been able to do song for such a long time because I'd been at opera school and so on, and so I decided to like put together a load of programs of different recital repertoire, and just, oh my god, I absolutely loved just being sat and with like my computer and just like doing some, like, it was almost quite admin-y, but I found it quite motivating in a way. I was like, oh, you know, I could do all these different programs at some point.
What is one piece of advice you would give to a young musician who might just be starting out at conservatoire, who is struggling with anxiety, and one thing that can help to improve mindset?
I suppose it is a combination of what I've said before, but I'd say I do think that, like, comparing yourself to other people at conservatoire is really bad. Try not to do it, and try to ease off on the social media. Find a teacher that you can really trust, okay? And because ultimately everyone's on a different path. I don't know, it's just, people say it all the time, but it really is true. And if you can just get that into your head, you know, and if you're finding that you're getting really, really nervous, I'd try and find the root of it, you know, like, is it maybe the panel that's making you nervous? Is it who are you trying to impress? Is it because your parents have encouraged you to be here and actually it's just too much pressure? You know, and if it is that, then maybe not in it for the right reasons. You know, if you ultimately, the way that I've thrived in a way and got rid of my anxiety is when I'm like, I'm doing this for me and for no one else. I'm doing this because actually I bloody love this feeling of anxiety. Love it. Just be like, yeah, bring it on. I'm going to go onto that stage and I'm going to use you, you know? And with time, I'm going to learn how to use you better. And each time you get that performance opportunity, it's not going to happen overnight. You know, maybe you just manage to start in a bit of a calmer place. Maybe you're really anxious and you found a bit of calm in the middle of that recital. You know, maybe, especially if things are recorded. I mean, I found that, which they often are these days, actually watch them back and go, oh, in a few months, leave it at the start, because I think it's always a bit like music, very self-critical, but after a while, go back to them, and you will see so many more good things about it, you know, and know that, like, actually, people are looking for those good things, they're not looking for the bad things. Of course. And hold on to those and just be like, I'm on a really long road, you know, even when so if you started and you're 19 or you're 18 and you're going to finish your undergrad when you're 20, I don't know, 22, 23, 24, that's all in the beginning, you know. There's so far to go. You've got, like, other programs to do. You've got, like, choruses to be in. You've got, you're gonna be in an environment, as long as you allow it to be, that's really supportive, you know, and that you can be yourself and you can be free in, you can mess up in. When you're that young, it's not going to make any difference to, like, your career. Even when you're older and you have a really bad night, it's not going to be life changing. If you're reliable 75% of the time, and, you know, the other 25% you're a bit iffy or you sing a bit badly, who cares? You know, just be like, yeah, I think try and be around people that are good to you and kind to you.
Definitely. I think definitely in performance as well, I think people, I often feel like people sense hard work and they sense, like, the intention of what you're putting across. I feel ultimately that becomes more important than I've got a perfect performance and I'm going to show everything and I'm doing every single thing right. It's more about what you intend and how hard you've worked behind it. I feel like that becomes the most important thing to put forward. And finally, what's one piece of advice you would give to a young performer to being and embracing their most authentic self?
Well, I think it just comes with time, and I don't think you should put pressure on trying to be, you know, I honestly thought I knew myself when I was 25, and I really didn't. I think I was putting on a bit of a front, to be honest, a lot of the time. And yeah, I guess it's something you just got to let happen naturally.
Definitely.
And learn from your experiences. And I would say, every awful thing that's happened to me in my life has made me stronger. Hey, it's cliche, isn't it? But it's just true.
It's true.
So
yeah.
even though it's like it's an awful thing that you might be going through, grief, like loss, rejection in auditions, or experiencing anxiety on stage, or maybe you've had a critic or someone said something after a performance class, or it's just pulled one of those awful strings, or it's hit a nerve. That's the word I was looking for. But something like that. At the time, it feels really, really awful.
Yeah.
And like you're never going to get over it. But you do. And breakups, when you fall out with your really close friends, they're just so valuable, and you can use them in your performance, or you can use them. And I was working with a director recently. She's like, I shouldn't have even said that. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, she's pretty up there with top directors in the world. And she's been quite tough on me. Don't believe you, kind of thing. I'm not getting your character. Pretty harsh stuff. And there was a part of me that, had this been a few years ago, I literally would have broken down crying. I would have walked out. I would have been all this, and I just didn't. And I was just like, part of me was just like, you can take this on board, and you're going to work with it, and you're going to keep on trying. And that is so much stronger than, I couldn't have done that had I not had all this other stuff happen to me.
Absolutely.
And that's what she saw, and she wrote in her note to me, opening night, like, thank you for being so patient with us. I'm really, pleased with all the work you've done, and you've reached a really amazing place.
Definitely.
And so, about being your authentic self, and just be a nice person.
Of course.
Just be kind,
it goes such a long way. Yeah, definitely.
Don't be a bitch,
Exactly. Yeah.
See the good in people. Most people are actually really nice. And if they're not nice to you, then it's their problem. Just don't take it on.
Exactly. There are times when, I feel like within this industry, sometimes I feel like there is a thing of it being a high pressure, high stress environment, and if perhaps someone says something that's out of character one day, or something that's particularly mean, God forbid, I do try and think, okay, well, perhaps they're having a bad day, perhaps this is a projection of something bad that's happened to them in the past, perhaps this is something that that they're struggling to deal with, and perhaps they actually think that way, and that's okay. You can take yourself away from that. And then sometimes I feel like sometimes people say these kinds of things because they are stressed, and it's the quickest way for them to feel better. But
I actually think this industry is very sensitive, and people. I have literally been this person, and I regret it, because I didn't realise that speaking about this person's voice, or commenting on how this person was moving, was going to upset them so much. Bloody hell, did I learn from that experience, And I actually think now, if someone says something, I often think, well, maybe they don't mean it in that way. Maybe they've just hit a weakness in me.
Yeah.
Because I honestly think, I don't think people want to bring you down. Unless you, there are very few people in the world that do. I do believe that going through life with that sort of outlook is much better and much stronger. And just don't don't interpret things that people say in that negative way. And look, at the end of the day, this industry is hard enough. We're all overworked and stressed all the time. We don't have to make it harder for ourselves.
No.
For anyone else, in fact. So
definitely.
Just don't take it on. Just
definitely.
Go, that's fine.
Yeah, and just
if
leave
you
it be.
Talk it out with someone, you just talk it out with them in a good way, and they'll apologise, or you'll apologise, and everything will be fine.
You'll be all right.
We'll
definitely.
all be fine.
We'll all be fine. We'll all be fine. Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. If any listeners are keen to listen to her perform, her Instagram is at Alex Lowe Soprano, and you can also find her on Facebook and Twitter. Her website is www.alexandralowe.co.uk, and if you would love the honour of seeing this extraordinary lady perform live, you can see her in Piero Lunaire by Schoenberg, which will be showing at the Royal Opera House from the 12th to the 22nd of May, and it will be her last performance as a Jette Parker young artist, so be sure not to miss out. Alex, thank you so much again. We are so grateful for your time with us today. And thank you to everyone for listening and tuning in. We'll see you again in the next episode.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.